All right, welcome to the Anton on One podcast, brain-tickling conversations for the ambitious and anxious young Filipino. My name is Anton Fausto, and our episode for today, it's quite different. For one, you're only listening to this episode instead of the usual format of seeing me and the guest, and that's because my guest for today was detained back in 1972 during the martial law period. So I would like to thank the Ateneo Martial Law Museum for connecting me to my guest today. He's a lecturer at UP teaching advertising design and editorial design, and he's kind and generous enough to grace this show and talk about his experiences. Welcome to the show, and I hope you're doing good. And thank you very much again for your time.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, it's quite it's very interesting to be talking to have a platform, a sudden platform to talk to people of your age who weren't exactly around when martial law was declared. So I'm just glad that I was actually your age or a bit younger than you when martial law was declared,
Mhm.
and it did change my life entirely.
Yeah, I wouldn't like to ano naman po, say that they're the same, but then when it comes to like major things that happen in our country's history, I feel like there could be some parallelisms from how today we're facing this global pandemic, which has it's never been seen before. And then yung nga, like you said po, when you were around my age, we had the martial law. Just to give a quick context, no, on why I plan on having this and why we're having this conversation. I believe it's a conversation that my generation needs to hear. All I know about martial law would be from the stories of my parents, would be from some of the movies that I watched, but then usually you can just it gets simplified to just statistics of number of people on the businesses that were closed. That I think that a conversation, a first hand narration of experiences could be one of the most powerful and effective ways to really paint that picture. So if it's okay, I just want to get into it already. Let's go back in time. You're around my age. Do you remember where you were, what you were doing when martial law was declared?
I was a I was enrolled at the UP. I was taking up pre-med. My parents wanted me to be a doctor, and but it was um, those were troubled times. I mean, I spent my entire schooling previous to UP at Don Bosco, which was a very religious education. So you accepted things as they were told you on faith. You were never allowed to question stuff. You just were supposed to believe because that's faith. And
Mhm.
then suddenly I'm here at UP West where everything was being questioned, where new answers were being found, and it was an entirely new world to me, and I was I was very glad I was there because I've always had a questioning uh, personality,
Mhm.
and you were amongst like-minded people. So I did become a little active in campus politics,
Mhm.
although I was never really part of any organizations. But because despite my beginning medical education, I was always an artist. I've always wanted to draw. And there's always a need for someone like that, a visual communicator in the activist movement. So that's why I guess you know, people knew me
Okay.
and the military knew me. So,
You were in
so
charge
I
po of the
no,
of
I wasn't in charge of anything. I was just
Mhm.
contributing to murals, posters,
Okay.
uh, and the UP was such an open campus. So and we always believed that it was there was a deal between the military and the police. You will never enter the campus, and we believed in that. So we sort of like we're not very careful, I guess. So I guess if you were in the intelligence community, you would have known me as one of the artists. Actually, there was a vigil right before martial law. Martial law was already being implemented when it wasn't declared yet. There was a vigil during martial law, and we were watching there. There was a bonfire, and in the distance, the Iglesia ni Cristo church was fully lighted up. It's always fully lighted up. Quite a vision at night, and there were shots being fired. There were flashes and shots. We could hear them. So we said, what the hell is happening? So apparently the military had started to seize radio stations, and there was a radio station in the iglesia, and the guards fought back. So we never knew how many were killed, but it sounded like a major firefight. And I think it was the following day that martial law was actually declared. So we sort
What
of
was
went
your
into
first
hiding.
impression? What was your first reaction when you were there? You heard the shots being fired. You saw there was a commotion. Like, did you want to check it out? Did you plan? I'm just gonna go home.
No, it was not. It was a disbelief mostly. Like, you knew that there was a threat to martial law. The civil liberties were slowly being curtailed, but you didn't quite expect that he would actually go through with it.
Yeah.
But he did. So there, the campus was suddenly quiet because nobody knew what was happening. We just heard word that the professors' houses were being raided. So we sort of lay back for a while, where we hid. We also got our haircuts very quickly. We all had our haircuts.
What was that? What was the purpose of it?
Because anyone with long hair was being targeted. Either you were a rocker, a hippie, everyone with long hair was being accosted in the streets, and you were being given haircuts.
Wow.
By
just on the haircut, no, it just reminded me of, I'm not sure if Don Bosco had the same rules, but studying Ateneo, there's a haircut rule. Like, the hair can't touch the ears, your bangs can't touch the eyebrows. I used to think that was parang exaggerate naman yun na in school, but the worst you'd get is like you get a sanction, you'll have to write something, there's a violation. But in here, back in the martial law, what was it, grounds for like imprisonment or something?
No, it was just that the military was given a blank check to do anything. So it was actually left to individual soldiers how to act. And I guess a lot of them acted with impunity because they could. Anyone who hated long hair was suddenly now a barber.
Yeah.
And they had scissors. They had scissors with
Did you
them.
have long hair?
Yeah.
BGs.
I would have been out of place if I didn't have long hair.
Oh, okay.
So we all sort of went into hiding, but slowly. So if it was September, so we slowly the campus slowly started to wake up, and people started to return to their classes. But there were now inspection tables at all entrances. You were searched, you were frisked, you were asked for your ID, and you were your name was searched for in a list. So, but it was, we
Business
sort of
as usual.
expected it would be like that. We also started to have new classmates. Suddenly there was who was that guy in a crew cut na nasa likuran? He wasn't here before. So they were there. They were short-haired, dark-skinned guys in the classes, all over the campus.
So medyo halata
They were
na at
funny
that point.
because they were carrying notebooks. They had notebooks. So some of the professors were brave enough to send them out, but for most, let them be there. So that went on until I was arrested on November 21, 1972. We were distributing some manifestos against martial law around the campus. And suddenly, it was like the movies when we went into the parking lot. The entrances were sealed. People starting coming out of vehicles, and then we were arrested. What was surprising was the amount of people hiding out from bushes and cars. And suddenly they all popped out, and there we were arrested. This was in front of the the Arts and Sciences building. So
Okay.
everyone saw it. Everyone who was there saw it. And then we were brought to the UP security headquarters. From there was interrogations and all that. And then we were brought to the Metrocom headquarters, because it's the the police then were known as, well, there was the police, there was the military, but the military that was in charge of the cities was the Metrocom, the Metropolitan Command. Now
Yes,
these were
I've
the
heard this
guys.
term.
These were the guys who were kind of violent, and these were the guys who would cut your hair. So we were brought there. I distinctly remember it was very hot. So it must have been afternoon. We were brought to the parking lot of this Metrocom building. We were asked to squat, squat like, but it was very, very long. And every time you would like falter and sort of start to sit, you'd be kicked in your behind, like your where your coccyx is, your tailbone. That's where I realized how painful. Those guys know where to kick
Where
you
to hit?
to inflict the most amount of pain. So there was once kick, there's a sudden blackout. Then you fell, and then you sort of regain consciousness, and you struggle to squat again because you'd be kicked again. So this happened like many times. I forget how long, but it was long. And it was in full view of people in the parking lot. I mean, there were people transacting the business, going in and out, and it seemed completely normal. I don't remember. Walang mga Uzi people. If that happened today, I mean, people would have cell phones and
Yeah.
be recorded. But that time, there was just nothing. It was just business as usual.
Yeah.
So after that, we were brought to some other offices and buildings.
Did this all just happen in one day?
Yeah, this happened in one.
Okay.
The arrest happened sort of must have been early in the day, and we were brought to the detention center like early, like madaling araw, like maybe 3 or 4, like that. But it was a continuous round of beatings and torture, and of course they kept asking if we were members of the NPA. You know what they were doing? They were looking at the soles of our feet. Take off your shoes, and it was only much later that I figured out, if you were a guerrilla and going to the mountains, your feet would be calloused, and so I had very smooth feet. It's like I put lotion in every night. So it was obvious, I guess, that we were not top ranked leaders of the Communist Party. By the way, they said we were being charged under the RA 1700, the anti-subversion law, which was formulated in the 1950s, just after the war. There was a communist guerrilla movement going on. It was for that, but it was completely beyond belief that they were still applying it in 1972, and the penalty was death. It was a death sentence for the leaders of the Communist Party under RA 1700, and imprisonment of around 12 years. We were just a follower. So the constant question was, were we members of the Communist Party? Of course, we kept denying it, because who is a member of the Communist Party? I mean, you don't carry a card. Said. And the joke at the time was, sir, hindi ako communist. In fact, anti-communist ako. And the police would say, communist, anti-communist, pareho kayong communist. Arestado kayo lahat. So that's basically what happened. I mean, eventually we ended up in the detention center. We were brought for processing in a gymnasium at Camp Crame. and that's where I saw a lot of the senators and the big time people who were arrested. They were all there. But we weren't brought there. After that, we were brought to the where most of the detainees were. They called it the Bachelor Officers Quarters, or the BOQ. It was like a clubhouse, but it was transformed to a detention center. The worst part of it was that uh, I guess fully half of the people in there were hoodlums and gangsters who were arrested during the saunas. That not they'd sweep through an entire poor and depressed area and arrest everyone who had tattoos, and they were all there. And these were the guys who kept telling us, kung wala kayong mga aktivista, hindi kami nahuli. And they really took it upon themselves to make us feel threatened, unwelcome, and they would have there's an initiation, sort of a welcome initiation, right? You'd be asked to go, that party trick where you sort of put your head on a baseball bat and you spin and spin and spin. So when you got up, they'd push you around, and you basically made like a plaything by those
these
guys.
are the other detainees. The other
yes,
detainees
they are detainees.
They were the ones who were instigating this, and they were the ones who were like sort of organizing and
yes,
doing
yes.
this whole
In
thing.
fact, they were the bastoneros, they call them. These are the detainees who sort of maintain with permission of the authorities, they maintain discipline or made sure that everyone followed.
It's the same way with how in jails now that there are so many prisoners that they have to assign some prisoners to hold some positions of power and responsibilities to help sort of maintain order within the whole community.
Yes, exactly. They're called mayor or bastoneros, or in newspapers they call themselves they are called trustees. These are the ones who go on errands in this. So, but they're basically prisoners too, detainees. The strangest thing was that the sergeant who was in charge of the whole thing it was rumored that he was also a detainee. Apparently this guy was a drunkard and had committed so many disciplinary cases that he was actually detained. But I mean, he was assigned to sort of be the head
of
on
your
top of the trustee. So he was it. And that guy was violent. He was violent. So I got beaten up by that guy. So I do remember I never knew his name, but they just called him Sergeant Salamasak, because that's exactly what he always said. Yun ang kanyang I mean, he'd say son of a gun, but this guy would say, you fucking Salamasak. So we always called him Sergeant Salamasak. Eventually, when my mother visited me, we were incommunicado for many days.
Yeah, this is what I wanted to ask. Like, what happened with your parents that from the moment you were detained till the next time you saw them? Did you ever get to communicate to them?
Yeah, well, what was tragic was that my dad had died the year before. And my mom was still in mourning. And I've always been really sorry about what she must have felt, because you were still in mourning, your husband just died, now your eldest son is now in jail, and those were like very uncertain times. When she finally got to visit, I said I'll write a longer letter the next time you bring clothes or food, whatever. So I did about my the experiences. I thought, in my innocence, I was so naive. I was so naive that I figured, it was just a common letter. So I said, oh, we were made to spin around. We were sort of kicked around in the parking lot. And, well, I was too naive to figure out that they would read the letters
Read it.
because before my mom. And so Salamasak suddenly barges into the room. It's a big room, and hold me off. He just picked me up and hold me off into the toilets. What was funny was that it was morning, and everyone was doing their toilet duties,
Business.
and everyone was asked to get out. And somebody inside one of the gay detainees from Tondo was screaming, "Not yet, sir! I'm not finished." But they dragged him out, and that's where Mr. Salamasa started to get really, really mad and accused me of spreading lies. But I said, "What
This is
I
what
was
happened.
just telling my mom what happened." She started punching me, and how hard were the punches? Well, I fell back and spilled an entire, that blue drum of water,
Mm-hmm.
which was, being used for the toilet stuff. I spilled the whole thing because I fell into it.
Yeah.
So, well, it was traumatic. Um, so the worst of the beatings happened there in that place, primarily because of Salamasak, also because of the hoodlums. But it stopped when we were transferred to Fort Bonifacio.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Do you
the
remember
sad thing
around
was
what,
that
what like how many weeks in was this or
that must have been after 1 week.
uh-huh.
After 1 week, also the worst part was because you were not allowed to go to the toilets at night. So everyone had this little can or big can, whatever, to sort of
Do their
poop
business?
in or pee in, and the hoodlums would ask the political prisoners to bring out their cans to be emptied and washed. Ah, so
Mhm.
that was that was that was one of the worst things. And those cans were full, so
Uh-huh.
that if you spilled anything, you'd have to clean up after that.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, but yeah, the basic uh, intent was probably to dehumanize you, to
Yeah.
to to make you feel that they're in control. That, oh, you fucking UP guys, that we are here because of you. Now you clean up our
Mm-mm.
mess.
It,
So
it's
yeah.
interesting that it's fellow detainees that would do this. When the story of the martial law is being taught or discussed about to the younger generations, for me it used to be so clear that there was one enemy and then he did this thing, and then when he was ousted, when the people power happened, that was the end of the story. Pero hindi pala. Like you see some of the realities that are still seen today. Like you see there's a huge divide with the citizens today, with the different sides of depending on who political leader you support. It's not just the leader and what he says. It trickles down to the effect of all the like
Mhm.
the everyday citizen.
It was the similarity today is that the the common criminals were entirely convinced that it was the UP students who sort
Yeah.
of brought about martial law, and that they were detained because of the political guys.
Yeah.
It was a lot better when we were transferred to Fort Bonifacio because it was
Hmm.
almost like 90% political detainees.
Okay.
So
So you're all sort of on the same side, if you can say.
yeah, there was respect for everyone because but the sad thing was when we were being transferred in about two buses, I think.
Hmm.
We were with some of the guys from Tondo, the criminals, the criminals, and they said we were being freed. That, there was going to be ceremonies and everyone would be released. But when the buses, we were on EDSA, when the buses went down, turned at Guadalupe
Mm-hmm.
to go to Fort Bonifacio, that's where the tough guys started crying. that for me was that for me was quite a scene. These were the guys who some time ago were beating us. Now
Mm-hmm.
they were crying because it was they were lied to. They were not being
Yeah.
released. We were being transferred to another camp.
Uh-huh.
It was called the EPIL Rehabilitation Center. That was as I said, because they were all mostly political prisoners. So it was peace and quiet. I was detained for a month, but that month is where the what happens is that you're being transferred from one detention area to another. So that's
Mm-hmm.
where all the beatings would be, all the intimidation. But for if you went beyond 1 month, then you sort of settle into a routine. You
Mm-hmm.
had friends, you had activities, and all that.
Yeah.
But I spent around 2 weeks in Fort Bonifacio, and then they called me, and everyone was clapping because they thought I was being released. I mean, people were actually happy that one of them was being released.
Mm-hmm.
And then the gate was probably about 50 meters from all the detainees areas, and then we were handcuffed. I was handcuffed to another, and then we all realized that no, I was just being transferred
Mm-hmm.
again. So I was moved to what is called Pook Bimbinan in Camp Crame. That was a real detention camp, like a concentration camp. There was a big gate. There was
Mm-hmm.
walkways with guards and lots of barbed wire. The first area where we were sort of asked to squat and were beaten up, that was near Santolan Road because I could hear the cars outside, the
Mm-hmm.
jeeps. But Pook Bimbinan must have been way deep inside the camp because I couldn't hear anything. Now when I got there, I saw being escorted this guy, si Lim Seng. He was a drug dealer, a drug pusher, Chinese, old Chinese guy. He was a major drug dealer. Eventually, he was shot by firing squad. And I saw him there, so I said, I am in deeper shit now than ever because
This is a
and
serious
then
criminal.
yeah, this is a one of the top criminals, always in the headlines. And then I saw Nilo Tayag, who was the head of the Kabataang Makabayan. So I said, shit, this is it. Why am I now with all these heads of the big timers? And the worst thing was that I was alone. I was not with the group I was arrested
Mm-hmm.
with. I was not with political prisoners. That is the worst thing to happen because you have absolutely no support group,
Yeah.
no one to
To talk to and
uh, and and when we were first detained at that first night, we were not given. You know how you see it in movies. You go into prison, you're given your,
the
your
uniform.
prison clothes, utensils. There was nothing like that. It was only there was an old man, an old political detainee who gathered some banigs and trays and spoons and forks and gave it to us because we were not given anything. So I was expecting more of the same at Pook Bimbinan.
Mm-hmm.
Can I digress a bit because
Yes.
this is not a martial law story, but it's such an enlightening story that I've always told people about it. So I was there. I was despairing that I was alone. There was no one to support me. And let me just backtrack about a year or 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
We lived in an apartment near the Marikina market, and there was a narrow walkway, and there was always an old lady selling bananas. Very
Mm-hmm.
old lady, must have been at that time around 70 years old, bent, uh, very shabby clothes. She went into one of the squatter areas in Marikina, and I've always told my mom, bakit why do you allow her there? I mean, she's in the way. We cannot get out until she gets out her bilao. But my mom said, let's just take pity on the old lady. There's no one to support her because her eldest child is in jail. I think he is a carnapper, so he's in jail. So no one supports the old lady. So we let it go at that. So year in and year out, the old lady will be there. And fast forward
Fast forward,
a few
yeah.
more years, I was there sitting at the the jail area. I was still handcuffed to this guy, this other guy. And who passes in front of the door but the old lady with her bananas?
Oh, she was
I
selling.
said, why why would she be selling here? This is a long way off from Marikina. Why would she be selling bananas? So I looked at her, she looked at me, and that was it. That gaze was that was it. So eventually they brought me into to the actual prison. So they just sort of opened the door and push you in. That's it. And then there was a young guy, about 35 years old, who came to me and said, Pare, you come with me, ako bahala sa'yo. So I said, what the hell is this? So we went deeper into the prison where it got darker and darker. So I said, this is it. I am about to get sodomized. so, so, and then this guy led me to a room. It was a cell, but it had a refrigerator, it
Mhm.
had curtains, it had nice bed sheets. I said, whoa, this must be the love room. so,
Oh,
so this guy says, my mother asked me to look after you. I said, who is your mother? And he said, she is the lady selling bananas in front of your house. So I said, oh.
wow.
So he started giving me utensils, the tray, everything as beddings. And then he brought me back to the cell assigned to me. There were 6 people in there. So I was the sixth. There was 5 already inside. And he told the guys, walang gagalaw dito. Hawak ko to.
Hmm.
So, can you imagine how?
Yeah, that's a full circle moment.
So
Years
it's
of
I
ano.
always tell I never tire of telling this to people too. Treat everyone nicely. So you
Yeah.
never know how this thing turns out. The cell I was sharing with the 5 other people was full of policemen who were involved in kidnappings, and they were all from Cavite. Really
Mhm.
tough looking guys. I also asked the guy, my benefactor, why are you inside here? And it looks like you've been here for ages. He said,
Yeah.
oh, tagal ko na dito. May kaso pa kasi. My case is still ongoing. Um, and he said, so I asked, anong kaso mo? So he brought out clippings from newspapers. He had a huge file of clippings. He was not a carnapper. He was an assassin. He was a hired gun,
Oh.
and he had killed a governor and some other politicians.
Mhm.
So he was there. His picture was there going down the plane, handcuffed with FBI agents. So this guy was big
Big time.
time, big time. He wasn't a carnapper at all.
It's not your
So
ordinary
when
criminal.
he said sagot ko to, oh, the policeman treated me very very well.
Wow.
And
Just because you allowed your mom also allowed the mom to sell banana queue outside your place.
yeah,
That's nice.
the guys I was with were very very tough people. If I asked you to cast anyone like a a um,
An
a
actor.
policeman involved in killings and extortion, oh, this would be the guys. They were
Mm-mm.
like they came from central casting. Um, Also, I was assigned. They assigned me to one of the top bunks. So it was double deck, the steel double deck things, like exactly what you see in prison movies. So during a moment of levity, I sort of swung around, swung my legs, and I hit the face of the guy at the
Uh-huh.
bottom bunk. I hit him with enough force to make my leg ache.
And
I
then
hit him on the side of his head. He looked at that. Do you know who Max Alvarado is.
No,
That
I don't.
villain in Philippine movies. Look at that swarthy face, hair slicked back, huge mustache, very rough face. He looked exactly like that, and I had just kicked him full force on the side of his head. You know what the guy did? He took out a comb, slicked his hair back again. He never said a word.
Did you say
Didn't even
so?
attempt.
Nothing, nothing. That's the
I
power of
I
the.
sort of I groveled at his feet to say I'm sorry. I was just I didn't mean to. I didn't know you were there.
Wow.
But that was the power of Mr. Assassin.
Yeah.
So it was from that jail that I was released eventually after a month or so.
Uh-huh. So the entire thing
Um,
happened you were detained for a month, and after that, were you? What was that the only time? Were you worried that it was going to happen again? Were there any scares? Something that went
no,
close to it again?
after you were released, the military owned you. Like I was asked to
Oh.
report every day to Camp Aguinaldo. You went there just so they knew you were in town. You hadn't gone up to the mountains, whatever.
Uh-huh.
So you went there every day. It was like having a job with no pay. You went there, signed the form, you got interviewed. Who were you with? They, they would really ask you every day who you spoke to, where were you,
Uh-huh.
etc., etc. Eventually, it loosened up to once a week, once a month, and then I figured, let me go back and see what's happening at the UP
Mm-mm.
because I wanted to know if I could enroll again. So I
Mm-mm.
went, and the dean of admissions, si Dean Malay, old old guy, but very active in politics also. He said, "Dude, the military asked me to expel you." I said, "Well, what can I do, sir?" He said, "I will not expel you. I will tell them you're under probation or something. But I do suggest that you take a leave of absence for a while because the problem is you're newly released.
Mm-mm.
Anyone you talk to
Will
will
be
be suspect."
suspect.
And I said this. Why don't I talk to the guys I hate in this campus? So anyway, uh, so I figured, yeah, let it cool down. I sort of bumped around for a while. I actually worked with government because
Wait, how
the
long
city of
though?
Marikina.
How long did that the when you were released and then you had to report to them regularly? How
A
long
year,
was
I
that?
think, about a
For
year.
an entire year, and you weren't studying or working during that time.
I was, but
Oh.
I ask an hour or two from work, then I'll
Mm-mm.
I'll report. I'll come back.
Uh-huh.
But it was the the military had full control of what you were doing.
But then
Um,
even if though all you did was by you were the artist, you designed some of the visual communication that you mentioned. That's all you had to do to be red tagged, to be imprisoned, to be beaten up, to be dehumanized. It reminded me of something I read before about how the Nazis treated their prisoners. It was a more intense version of how in your story the way you had cans, that's where you did your business and all that. But then in what I read, the prisoners in their carts, they were all cramped up, and then they had to do their business. They had to pee and poop right there. So they were all standing in their filth, and I feel like this
mhm, mhm,
this was done to help even the soldiers sort of look at them differently, not as humans anymore, because diba, sobrang baho na, sobrang ano na, as in
mhm, mhm.
that's not something that humans would do. I want to ask, in your experience in that 1 month, or even after that 1 month, because just because you're not detained anymore doesn't mean that you're mentally like free and as if everything's all right. Like what did this do to your spirit, for one? Like, did you regret ever protesting? Were you more inspired? What was the state of your spirit like during that time?
Well, it just for me it just proved that the state I was fighting against, uh, that the fight was completely justified
Mm-hmm.
because
That's
it
what was
it
happening.
I experienced it firsthand
Mm-hmm.
that. that it was true. That's why when I hear comments like, "Oh, nothing really happened during martial law," there was
Yeah.
nothing. I was completely grasped by by
Yeah.
by people who can actually be convinced that that didn't happen just because it didn't happen to them.
Mm-mm.
It doesn't mean it didn't happen at all.
Yeah, and I feel like it shows in your story in the different characters of the story that you just narrated, with the different detainees also are part of it, that it was left in the hands of individuals in the military to sort of
Mhm.
take the law on their own. So I I I feel like it would make some sense that even up to today, because the Philippines all the Filipinos are comprised of, there are some people who were detained, there were others who were detained for other reasons, there were other people in control. So I would imagine that the following generations would sort of reflect that type of division, that it wasn't, just because these really bad things happen doesn't mean that everybody's enlightened after, that everybody knows really what happened. This is my first time to hear. Although my parents also were against it. They were much younger. They weren't detained, but I'm on that side, that I know of what happened. But I can only imagine, what if there are people whose grandparents and parents were like the, what's his name, Sergeant, what was his
Salamasak.
nickname again, Sagamasak. I'm sure that
Salamasak.
his side, his relatives, his descendants, like they would still sort of continue that narrative of how the martial law was to them.
I guess it depends on which side you're on.
Mhm.
In fact, which province you came from. I guess one of the questions people always ask is how did we forget so soon? Actually, it wasn't so soon. It was a gradual process. I mean, the EDSA happened in 1986. Cory
86.
became president, and EDSA happened before that. But that was probably the height of joy in being a
Uh-huh.
Filipino, that you saw how deep the despair was during martial law. And there really was it was not the the golden era that
That people
people
would
are
say.
saying.
Yeah.
That was si Marcos was very good at propaganda.
Mm-hmm.
He had the National Media Center. He had the Design Center of the Philippines. Everything was
Yeah.
being cosmetically designed. So
Yeah.
there were huge buildings, very new. It was all about infrastructure, they were saying. But beyond that, you know that like you have some relatives or friends who lived far beyond their means. Oh, ganda na kotse nito. Bakit? How can this guy afford a Mustang
Uh-huh.
when I know wala namang utang lahat? That was how the infrastructure was then. I mean, the Philippines wasn't really rich; it was poor, but we
But it was.
started borrowing money, and you know
Ah.
how international lenders are. They would lend you money. I mean, the
Yeah.
ADB, the World Bank, they will lend you money.
Yeah.
Um, I still during the Marcos rule, I had a chance to go to Ilocos. Ilocos was still very agricultural,
Mhm.
but the roads were like world class. I've never seen roads as wide and as smooth as the
Oh,
Ilocos road, but they were just
that's it.
carabaos and tractors.
Yeah.
So he took care of his
It's people.
province mates.
Yeah, yeah.
That's why he knew that Filipinos are very regional. That
Yeah.
is why any province that
Mm,
speaks Ilocano, from La Union to Ilocos to
yeah.
Pangasinan, everyone, kaya nga sabi niya, it's the solid north. Because it was. He
Yeah.
took care of these guys, and they adored him,
Yeah.
idolized him.
Ma-
So we are like that. We're regional. Si Imelda
mm.
naman handled the
In the
Visayas,
south. Yeah.
Tacloban, Leyte. So these are two huge strongholds
Yeah.
of the Marcoses. So and they were very well taken care of. So the
Yeah.
loyalty of these guys would be forever Marcos. Um,
Just to share, sir, my mother actually is from Ilocos, and her parents, my grandparents, used to be Marcos supporters. But up to this day, I still do have relatives that support Marcos, and it it shows the point that when you mentioned how Marcos sort of by the cosmetic, like it looked nice, like if from if you just take a glance at the Philippines, you'd think that, oh yeah, these are the golden years. But added to that, that he also censored the media. So even if the people who experienced it firsthand know that this isn't the truth, like we I went through it, I know what actually happened, you can't be too shocked, no? To if you look at the climate today, if you look at the collective knowledge today of how it's sort of a debate. It's not anymore like this is what happened. It's more of no, it's seeming like no, my opinion is that the martial law era was the golden years that Philippines was
Mhm.
doing good economically. It makes sense because of the institutional changes that happened then. We are currently feeling the effects up to today.
Yeah, I mean, it was the major construction companies were owned by Marcos cronies. So
Mhm.
you can just imagine the amount of kickback that that happened
Yeah,
building this
yeah.
huge the hospitals, the heart center, the kidney center institute, the and like the famous film center, Imelda Marcos wanted. So she said, we must look rich.
Yeah.
So, she intended to have an international film festival, um,
Mm.
and they rushed the construction of the film
And
center.
many people died constructing this.
Yes, because it was being rushed. I mean, cement needs time to cure before
Hmm.
you put another layer on it, but they kept piling layer upon layer of several floors, and the whole thing collapsed.
Hmm.
And it was quick drying cement, so that the guys who were under there just were entombed.
Hmm.
So, despite that, the center opened a film festival hosted by Brooke Shields. Who is she? She was a very minor actress.
Uh-huh.
Uh, so it was all for show. It was yun nga, parang if you had friends or relatives who have lavish parties, nice cars, but you know that they're deep in
Yeah,
utang, it
it's
was
the
kind of like
same.
that.
Makes
So that
sense.
eventually it will collapse, and which it did about 1983. That was when everything started to collapse. I mean, I was working then already, and there was salary cutbacks. Um, the Some of my office mates became destitute because, and these were like upper class, middle class people,
Sorry, sir. When you
because
say destitute, what does that mean?
they suddenly had no, they became poor
Oh, okay.
because because they had taken loans for to build their houses, and the interest suddenly
Like,
like became uh,
oh,
several hundred
yeah.
percent over what they
Initially,
their jobs sort of
okay.
allowed
Could
them to
afford.
pay.
Mm-hmm.
So they went deeper and deeper into debt. I mean, several of them lost their houses.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, you were suddenly a few years ago you were living nicely, and then suddenly you're homeless. The bank seizes your
Yeah,
house.
yeah.
Ganun kagrabe ang economy. So it's kind it's hard to believe. It's not a matter of opinion because it's a fact. It is
Yeah.
a fact.
That's what happened.
Don't even read local newspapers. Read what the World Bank has to say. Read what the foreign
Mm.
newspapers have to say, and eh, that is the truth. And don't say that there's no hidden wealth. I mean, the Supreme Court here and various courts in America have
Yeah.
already said that yes, Marcos actually stole close to $10 billion.
Mm-mm.
And it's there. I mean, I was as a certified martial law. What is the official name for that? I'm a human rights victim, and
Mm-mm.
um, everyone got a very tidy amount of money coming from the sale of a Marcos property. So I
Oh,
mean,
was you were given? Were the victims?
yes,
Oh, okay, all right.
there really
Who
was
sort of
compensation.
who
See,
organized this?
this was the time of Pinoy.
Okay.
He established the Human Rights Victims Claims Board. so
I've
that
never heard of this.
really this was
Yeah.
like
I'm
what
sorry.
year
I've
was
also,
this?
like I mentioned
Uh,
kanina, sir, I haven't been so
well,
um
this was like in 2014.
2014. That's a long
It
time though
was
after.
yes. They actually had a board. It was headed by an ex-police woman, police general,
Okay.
and the intention really was to just to quantify ilan ba ang
Yeah.
naging human rights victims, and it was a very tedious process, and you were interviewed by lawyer upon lawyer,
Mm-hmm.
and you had to present evidence
Yeah.
that you were actually
What was your proof?
that's
It's
another
not like you can
human
take selfies
interest
in
story.
the.
I made friends with when I was released from Fort Bonifacio,
Mhm.
I had already a sketchbook full of detainees, my fellow detainees, camp life and
As
all
an
that. It was
artist. Okay.
yes. When I looked at my stuff when I got to Camp Crame, they were all gone. They tore it up.
Mm-mm.
So it was not allowed to have any records or pictures or
Yeah.
drawings of what was happening in the camp. Now, I made friends with one of the military photographers. We discussed cameras. I think he had a Nikon
Mm-mm.
FM like I did, and I said, "Hi, it's like wow, how photographers talk to each other,
Yeah.
lenses and all that." But he was there to take pictures of the detainees and all that. And the next time he came around, he slipped me a picture of me and my friends, and we were about 10 in a picture in a photo, and he said, "Sa'yo lang itago mo."
Do you still have this photo?
Yes, I can pass that on to you. But
Yes, please. Yes, please. I'd love to see it.
and that was the evidence that I presented. Aside
Oh.
from the affidavits of the guys I was beaten up with, so we sort of exchanged affidavits, and
And sort of said that yes, he was also
yes, and
there. Okay.
um, the what the sad part of that whole exercise was. Uh, it was being held in a building at the UP campus. And when I first got there, said ko, bakit is there a convention going on? Ang dami-daming vans. And
Mhm.
I found out that these were people from the provinces. Somebody was collecting money, around 500 at the very least, 1.5 at the highest, to say that, you pumunta ka lang, sama ka sa amin. We will give you a story. You tell the UP
Oh,
guys that story,
so you get the
and
compensation.
you will get money. What they gave you actually was a slip, just a slip that you actually submitted your name, that you were recorded there, that you had to come back. So when these guys went back to the province and they had the slips, so the whoever was behind this scheme was saying, "Look, these guys are about to receive a lot of money because they already have the slips." So
Yeah.
ganon, people were eating in the vans, and the lawyers were screaming at these were young law students, paralegals, and I saw one old lady being interviewed, and the lawyer was screaming at the lady. So after that, I spoke to the guy. I said, "Attorney, why were you screaming at
What's
the
up?
old lady?" He said that's a tactic that we use, because when I first asked her, she said that her husband was killed inside the house. When I screamed at her, she said no, that the husband was actually killed outside the house, but
Mm-hmm.
our house was burned. The third time she was screamed at,
Ah.
the the house wasn't actually burned. The husband actually disappeared. So it's a
Yeah. The
tactic.
story
So
didn't make sense.
and he said, because their stories are all the same. It's like somebody did
Mm.
2 or 3 versions and gave it around, so everyone
There was a
was
template.
reciting from, yes, a template of the
Yeah.
story. So when you scream at somebody like that, the story changes. So
Nakakapagod, no? Even if this is a
yes.
good act already of trying to right a wrong, but
Mhm.
despite that, there still have these scams, these he's trying to um take advantage of the situation, these still happen.
Yes, 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 yes. People believe them. I mean, my kasambahay, about this was about a year or so ago.
Mm-hmm.
She said, "I have to leave." She said she wanted to take a few days leave because they were distributing Imelda Marcos's riches. You just had to join an organization. You paid like $100 to have an ID, and then they said you just wait, uh, because Imelda wants to give away her wealth.
Oh,
So people believe that.
this is coming from Imelda directly, or so they thought.
No, this was coming from some other people.
Okay,
But people believe that. People believe that Imelda would share
was really giving away her
her
money.
her wealth. Mm. So I guess to this day, I would not be surprised if a lot of people would vote for Bongbong Marcos simply because they still remember, they
He was
might
giving
actually
away.
start giving away money.
Yeah, yeah, and
But
that makes sense,
I
no?
just hope, um, see, that's a problem. The young people of today, your audience, have never lived. We're not
Yeah,
around yet during martial law, so it's slowly. I guess the fault of the governments that followed was that um, they just simply were too kind. I mean, they did not want to live through the
live in the
experience
past.
again.
Yeah,
I mean, I guess Filipinos, because we have so many natural disasters.
there's so
we
much.
have we have a we have a volcanic eruption, and then
Uh-huh.
we sort of move on. We move
To the
on very
next
quickly because
disaster.
there will be another disaster. And if you like dwell on that,
If you get
you'll lose
stuck,
your mind.
that's
So it's
right,
that. Ganon tayo. And
man.
for us, whether a disaster is natural, whether it's man-made, we
Mm-mm.
just move on.
Yeah.
We are, I hate the word resilient,
I
because
was about to say it's a resilience of the Filipino people is a great thing, but oftentimes it manifests in these bad, I can't think of a better word, bad ways that
I mean,
sort of.
unlike say Germany, if you do a Nazi salute in Germany, you'd be in jail. If
Yeah.
you confess to reading Hitler manifestos, you'd end up in jail. Similarly, in Japan,
Yeah.
Japan had completely erased its militaristic
The
bent.
image, the yeah.
So it was a government thing that,
Yeah.
let's not just forget the past, but let's educate people and
Yeah.
and 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 punish people who would like to continue. But it's not like that here.
It's not the
It's
same here. I watched this movie called The Kingmaker, which was initially supposed to just focus on Kagawit Island, the one where there were
Mhm.
animals from
Yep.
Africa that Imelda had
Yes.
brought.
Mhm.
And one of my favorite lines was from Pinoy, where he said, na, the people who forget the mistakes of the past are condemned to repeat them.
Mhm.
And I think that is it's sadly being shown now. People talk about oh no, there could be like Bongbong Marcos is running for president. He might come back into power again. But I disagree because it's not that he doesn't need to be president to still have power. It's not that ever since they went to Hawaii and Marcos and Ferdinand Marcos died, it's not like it stopped there. Like it still has been continuing up until today. Like you don't need to have that seat and you don't need to have that title to still have the influence. And I think just how I'm looking at it now and trying to understand why the hell are we still here? Why do we still think this way? It's because you said the government. It's a government. It has to come from the government to educate the people. And if the government still has ties to that power that was supposedly ousted back then how can you expect
Mhm.
any change to happen?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Bongbong is running. By the way, he calls himself BBM.
That's
If
another
you
ba
notice,
it's a I,
his handlers, this
Oxford yata or it's a
yes, the
marketing thing.
Analytica.
Yeah, yeah,
Do
yeah.
not ever call yourself Ferdinand Marcos Jr. Do not do
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Do not
Marcos
even call yourself
Jr.
Bongbong Marcos. You are now BBM,
BBM.
the brand. Rebranding is what we call it in advertising.
Magagaling sila.
Magaling talaga, and the hidden wealth is still financing all this.
Yeah.
The only reason Bongbong wants to become president is that many more millions are still stashed away and are being debated over in courts. Can you imagine if he became president? Then it would be so easy to free up the millions in Swiss banks, in Panamanian accounts, in Liechtenstein accounts.
Yeah. And
So
rewrite
yun,
history and sort of just
yeah,
change the story, since it's the government who has the power to sort of dictate what the narrative will be that the country's going to believe.
yes, and the scary thing is he is number 2 in the surveys, and after Sara Duterte.
Yeah.
And if you're
And Sarah
Lenny
hasn't even
Robredo,
official isn't the Sarah isn't even officially running. I mean, we all expect that they're gonna switch to Gani Bato, but despite her not even officially being on the list,
Mhm.
she's number one. Oh my
and
god.
and Lenny is either 5 or 6.
Mm-mm.
So it's I often quote to my class, see, because we're in advertising and editorial design. I let me paraphrase Imelda Marcos when she said, "Perception is more important than the truth."
Oh yes, yes.
So
Perception is real. Ay, perception
yes,
is real.
something like
Truth
that.
is
Something
not.
like that.
Yeah, yeah.
hmm yeah, I think that's it. That's what we believe in advertising. We don't. It's what you perceive something to be.
Yeah. It's how you
That makes you
present it
want it. It
also.
makes you want it to buy it. Yeah.
Yes.
So it's I mean, politicians are products. And Bomo is being marketed very well.
Yeah. When you look at the experiences you went through, the many decades that have passed, you personally firsthand. Okay, this is one of the few times this is only the only conversation I've ever had in my life where I can talk to someone who has really gone through it, because even my parents who would tell us the stories, they were 11, 13 years old when it happened. they
Mhm.
they also, it was more of the stories that they heard during that time. But as someone who has really gone through it, you experience the being detained, all those things, and then the Marcos got ousted, and then it sort of looked like something new was going to happen, and then we're here again today, and the things that you mentioned. What does that make you feel?
Um, I want to migrate to Mars. Is there a line for it? Parang parang um, I really don't know how to feel about it. Maybe I'm very Filipino in that sense that I do not like to dwell in the past anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Let's move on forward. Let's
Yeah.
figure out how to do this. I'm not. Let me tell you another side story.
Mm-hmm.
Another side story. I have lots of side stories. I worked in Malaysia, Indonesia for 8 years. Brought my entire family along, and my kids were enrolled in a small international school in Kuala Lumpur. So we were there attending one of those school activities, and I nudged my wife and I said, "Hey, wife, look who is beside me." It was Irene Marcos and Greggy Araneta. They were also hiding out in Kuala Lumpur
Mm-mm.
under the patronage of one of the datus, one of
Yeah,
the
yeah.
politicians. And they were there right beside me. And I said, really wonder what I should do. And then when my son came to me and spoke in Filipino, the couple left. They moved to the other side.
Yeah.
Another time, this was a lot more recent. This was about a year and a half ago. A very good friend of mine died, and I gave the eulogy at his at uh, what was that called? But I gave the eulogy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it was quite long, so very personal, and it was from the heart. Okay, so um, suddenly somebody comes to me and says, pare, ang ganda no talagang kuhang-kuha mo yung mahal na mahal natin talaga si Dennis. I looked and it was Bongbong Marcos. Bongbong Marcos. And
So you're able
and
to see them face to face.
of course,
Irene
I even
and
had drinks with the guy. Um,
how?
eh, well, the one of the relatives owns Don Paparam, which is a very fine Filipino made rum. But
Uh-huh.
so it was there. The bartenders were good. So those when I realized this si Bongo can drink. So we were there. How many rounds did we have? So we were chatting about Dennis, and I wanted to tell him. No, I was debating. Should I tell this guy that his father jailed me and
Yeah.
turned my life around? Uh, um, but I said, that occasion was for our friend.
Yeah.
We were honoring his life. It didn't seem
Have
right. But what I felt was that this guy was not the issue himself. I mean, perhaps the issue was his politics, but at that precise moment, we were just two mourners who were
yeah.
missing a friend, and we had round after round. so, so looking back, I get a good laugh when I tell people that ano kaya? What if I strangled the guy and
Yeah.
changed Philippine history?
Wow, you can only ask nagang the what if. There was when can we go back to that? You're having drinks with Ferdinand Marcos Jr. Was your blood boiling? Did you what was there anything you wanted to say, or I don't know, did you just treat him like any other normal Filipino?
It was kind of like that, like the latter. Uh, he was he's trying to project himself as a completely normal and just one of you guys that
Yeah.
if you go to his Facebook account, that's what he is. He tells about his family, what he ate for breakfast, and during that night he was like, I was better dressed than the guy. He
Uh-huh.
did not have bodyguards. uh, and his wife was extremely gracious. So we talked about the guy who just died. And
When we talk about I mentioned a while ago how do you feel about what's happening now? And first I want to know what made you come back to the Philippines. You were already working abroad. You went back to the Philippines and you teach in UP, which I would imagine would trigger some past memories because that's where you were caught. That's where a lot of the quote unquote action happened. How do you still come back and I don't know, do you still have hope for the future of this country?
yeah, I guess my uh, look, I belonged. I was part of an organization during my activist days, whose leader was Sal Panelo.
Wait, sorry. Panelo
Si
was
Sal Panelo, the former spokesman,
yeah.
the 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 rather obnoxious spokesman previous to Harry Roque.
Uh-huh.
That thin guy who, you
Yes.
know,
He was
he was the
sorry
head of an
of
activist organization that I was part of. He
oh
was an activist.
the
And
same
this is
way.
what I tell. This is what
Uh-huh.
I tell my class. A lot of my activist friends actually turned out to be worse than the people who we despised.
Yeah.
That's how human nature is. It's
Yes. The
I
same way
mean,
how Harry Roque was a very respected human rights lawyer and
yes,
activist as well.
the Laude case, and he was, and then now you look more depressed than I am.
Yeah.
But life's like that. I've been lucky and privileged enough to have lived through almost the entire circle of this thing. I mean,
Yeah, it's a circle. It's not a line because we're coming back. We're back.
yes, and now the for me it gives me for me, my duty now is to I've given up on changing the world or this country. I never wanted to burn down the house. I just wanted to make minor repairs. Look,
Mm,
the roof was leaking, the doors were stuck. I just
yeah.
wanted minor repairs. I never wanted to destroy it. So, so my I've given up on the whole big picture. But what I am into now, because I'm a teacher, is to mold young people,
Yeah.
young impressionable people. That the change really must come from you guys. You guys will start it. It's not let's stop thinking of changing the entire Philippines. Let's
Yeah.
change one person at a time. And hopefully, you'd be the catalyst for the new generation.
Yeah. I really hope so too. And to share, I was able to have an episode a few months ago with Jim Paredes of the Apo Hiking
Mm-hmm.
Society,
Mm-hmm.
and when I asked him the same question, like how do you feel that you were part of the movement, you were out there really making change, and now this is what's happening to the country. He sort of shared the same sentiments. He said, "Tapos na yung panahon namin. Like we already did our story has already happened back when we were around that age. It's now your time. It's now my
Mm-hmm.
generation's time. This huge responsibility, which is very just very scary. I never imagined that it would turn out like this. It would be like this now, but I guess the same way how you guys, many decades ago had to make those tough decisions, had to make those sacrifices. I guess that is what my generation today has. That's what we have to do.
See that the challenge now, if you're really scared about a Marcos comeback, is that if you examine the economic pyramid of the Philippines, only about 1 or 2% are in our class, and the
Mm-mm.
people who will really determine the results of
The
this
votes.
coming elections are the
Yeah.
bottom of the pyramid. Um, and these are the guys who will vote Duterte or Marcos.
Yeah.
So, and I always tell my students, and also my friends, especially on social media, we will have to convince the greater majority not to go the line of Bongbong Marcos. And it is a very good start that we do not call them bobo,
Yeah.
bobotante, idiots.
Yeah.
It's surprising how many very educated people I know still resort to calling the others who do not agree with them as complete idiots.
Yeah.
I said, if you, I said, look at yourselves in the mirrors. We were against a dictatorship where only one point of view was being respected, theirs. And isn't that exactly what you guys are doing? That
Yeah.
everyone else that does not share your view is bobo?
Yeah.
Parang
I
hindi ah. Parang you are the same people that we used to be
yeah.
fighting against. Di ba parang ganun?
Those are
It's
the same principles that you're fighting against. And I've had this conversation a bunch of times that there are so many disagreements and it's so easy to just say, mga bobo yan eh. Yung mga, ba't nila binoto si Duterte? Don't they see why are they still supporting him when he's out there cursing, when he's out there really disrespecting everyone? Bobo talaga. But I feel like that could be like a shortcut to just say, oh, bobo sila. Then that's it. So you're not gonna do anything about it. Because I think
Mhm.
there has to be a deeper issue, something that is connected to the human nature of how people behave with how the same way that your friends and your fellow activists and leaders of these groups are now going against the same principles that they were fighting and sacrificing their lives for. That there has to, I don't know, I'm just here to sort of have this conversation. I don't know what I don't have any advice on what we're supposed to do. I don't know what we're supposed to do, but I do hope that having this conversation is a step, is a baby step, is a start somewhere.
We are at the start of we're not even started the election campaign, and you can definitely see the trend. And Marcos money
Have a huge role. Yeah.
will work. And si Bongbong is really at the top of the social media game. He has and I wanted to say this at the start of this conversation, that it's strange that you are blocking me out. That um, that now in a democracy, I have to hide not from the military but from a sector of our society that
Mhm.
will pounce upon me because uh,
Yeah.
I may have anti-Marcos sentiments.
Yeah.
You know,
That's right.
it's it's kind of like the Japanese times where people would spy on each other and
Mm-mm.
report on each other. Like it's nakakatakot where we now are on both sides. As I said, I mean the anti-Dutertes as as uh, as vehement in their
Angry.
dictatorship as
Yeah.
the other side.
This isn't new. This isn't new pala. What we're facing now, this isn't new. I wanted to ask, sir, with all your experiences in your fellow seeing your fellow activists sort of switch sides, with seeing how when people in the military or Metrocom, when they're given power, then they act on their own accord. They start beating people, they start abusing their power. Do you believe that people are inherently good?
Um, yes. I guess. I mean, my human interest stories will certainly support that. But I guess it's just no. It's just that it was your job to beat up people. It's you were convinced that you're doing good by beating up these enemies of the state.
Yeah,
Um,
so called.
it happens on both sides. I mean, the uh, uh, I mean, there have been cases where the NPA started to kill its own people out of suspicion. I mean, there was a
Mm.
sad chapter in their history that what was that? Oplan Ahos, which is the the military had spread rumors that we have deep penetration agents within your ranks, and
Mm.
they started killing their own compatriots in the Visayas. That's sad. It's sad when we are victims to manipulation. We
Yeah.
get manipulated. We not, and that is what's happening. That is what I am afraid of will happen again because we are so primed to be manipulated by Facebook, social media in general. I mean, how can Donald Trump convince people that COVID did not exist,
Mm-mm. Yeah.
despite all the scientific evidence? I mean, to
Oh,
this
and
day, people.
yeah, the pandemic is already another. This is another. I don't know. It's a clear reality that shows the fault in human nature, where something as factual and scientific as a health pandemic has become a political
Mhm,
debate on whether to get
mhm.
vaccinated, on if this virus even exists. Like some, it just shows it makes me it makes me less and less hopeful in humans. But I wanted to ask one of the last few questions that I want to ask, um to the younger generation. What do you think though is in our control? Because we're going up against Marcos money, we're going up against huge players, and big institutions that you have that have to change, and a lot of things have to change. But what do you think is in our control, so that history won't repeat itself, so that we won't be making the same mistakes, if anything?
I guess education is really a big part of it. We have to
Yeah.
educate people. Uh, we must not. We must never let our guard down. I guess the fault of my generation is after Marcos, we let our guards down.
Mm-mm.
We were so happy Cory was there, and then sige, bahala na kayo dyan. Bahala ka na, Cory.
Ah,
And then we slowly went back to that. What are the gains of EDSA? It's almost nothing now. It's been completely erased. So,
yeah.
and we're still very backwards as voters, I guess. Cory happened because Ninoy got killed.
Killed. Yeah.
Pinoy happened because Cory died.
Yeah.
Lenny happened because Jesse
Jesse
Robledo
died.
died. It was we're so
Emotional.
yeah we vote on by our hearts,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
not our
It's
head.
the same way we my mom is a huge finance person. She's behavioral she deals and teaches behavioral finance, and I can liken this to how people make decisions on their money. We know that you only are supposed to spend what you can afford, but if it feels like you want to spend on this, even if it doesn't logically make sense, like people are like, it has shown it's shown in how in statistics in how people have been living in like we see the numbers that we act based on our emotions talaga. And I think that's really why I really push to have this conversation. I really it has to be the emotions eh. You can tell someone my age that hey, these thousands of people were tortured. These many people died. But to just be able to get at least one story and be able to lay it out, to be able to go through that story and hear it firsthand. I hope that anybody listening to this, I hope that your emotions, if you still don't believe for some reason on the facts and the history of what happened, I hope that your emotion was somewhat, I don't know, activated or touched with the story of with your story today. Nakakalungkot. And for sir, for you to laugh at this pa rin, I think that there is something to be learned there. I don't know if it comes with maturity also or an
Resilience.
acceptance and resilience.
No, no, I was telling my students, we all have a major event that changes our lives forever. My parents were were your no no they were teenagers when
Mhm.
World War II happened.
World War Two. Okay.
My mom's entire family died from American cannon fire during the so-called liberation of Manila. We were in Marikina. They all died. I mean, she went out for an errand, came back, and the entire family of 12 people was dead under the rubble of their house. And
So she
all her
was lucky to
relatives
go on
were,
that errand.
yes.
This is
But
wow. I oh my god. Okay.
she bounced back from it, continued the studies, and and had us. Now we had martial law, which
Uh huh.
upturned our lives, and now you guys have this pandemic, and it's a new day after this. This will pass, and I am telling people that you may, you've always had concerns about you have no experience, how will you get jobs, etc., etc. But now there are new jobs being created, new jobs that were never around.
Mm-hmm.
Who influencers get money? I mean,
Yes.
you. um, I mean, these are things that you guys can do. We This is a brand new world. It's all up to you. As long as your sights are out there, you look
Yeah.
forward, you steel yourself. Don't. You cannot believe the amount of mental health issues I'm dealing with students.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to be. Sabi nga sa kanila, I'm not a teacher. I'm a guide. I've been there before. The internet has made. Uh, it used to be that teachers are the sole source of knowledge. Hindi na. It's
Mm-hmm.
Google. Teachers are there now to inspire you guys, to inspire people to. We've been there before. I'm your guide.
Yeah.
I've climbed up to the mountain and I know the best routes. There.
with with and tama nga that you said that you inspire, and I want to thank you again very very much, sir, not just for your time and for your openness to share your story, but for continuing to fight the good fight,
Mm-hmm.
no matter how hopeless it may seem. I'm not shocked. I wasn't expecting naman to feel happy after this conversation or be, so inspired in a way na, oh my gosh, yes, there's still so much hope. I think it's more of, I guess I've been able to, through this conversation, I've gotten to accept it a little more that bad stuff are still going to happen. Um, but despite the bad things that are inevitably going to happen, you still have to make the decision. Like it's still up to us to make the decision on based on what principles we have, on the information that we know, on what we believe, what our values are, what we believe is right. And yeah, with that, sir, I'd wanna thank you again one last time. And is there anything else that you would want to add as we conclude this episode?
No, I think I've said more than my share of.
Yeah.
but it's all in there. I mean, you guys just hang in there.
Just hang
This
in there.
it's there's a new day coming. Don't get depressed. I mean,
Yeah.
um, I'd really like to say just soldier on, but I know that's not true. I mean, I know that if you're undergoing mental health issues, it's easy for somebody who doesn't have it to say, just be strong.
Just get over it.
But just talk to friends.
Yeah.
Go cycling.
Mm-mm.